All right, ready to dig into something that could actually impact what you eat for dinner.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
President-elect Trump's pick for Secretary of Agriculture,
Okay.
Brooke Rollins.
It's a choice that's really got people talking.
Yeah.
Because Rollins, while she does have a background in agriculture, she's also a longtime Trump ally
Right.
with some pretty deep ties to the America First movement. So how will this appointment actually shape the future of American agriculture?
Yeah.
And what could that mean for, you know, the average person, for you?
Okay, so let's unpack this America First thing a little bit.
Okay.
I know that's been a big theme for Trump
Right.
throughout, his whole political career. But how might that translate to, like, food policy?
Well, to understand that, we really need to look at Rollins's background.
Okay.
She grew up on a farm in Texas,
Got it.
got her degree in agricultural development from Texas A&M,
Okay.
and was active in Future Farmers of America and 4-H.
Okay, so she's not just some politician
Exactly.
who's never, set foot on a farm or anything like that.
Yeah, she's got that kind of hands-on experience.
That's got to count for something, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It suggests a real understanding of the challenges that American farmers and rural communities are facing.
Okay.
And I think that was something that Trump really emphasized when he was announcing her nomination.
Okay.
He talked about Rollins's commitment to, quote, American food self-sufficiency
Right.
and the restoration of agriculture-dependent American small towns.
Okay, I mean, those sound like pretty grand phrases.
Yeah.
But, like, what do they actually mean,
Right.
for everyday people?
Yeah.
Like, is it going to change what I see at the grocery store or how much I pay for my groceries?
Those are the million-dollar questions, right?
Yeah.
And I think to really answer those, we need to consider a couple of key areas.
Okay.
First, trade.
Okay.
You remember those soybean tariffs a few years back?
Uh-huh.
You might have noticed the tofu prices went up
Okay.
because China had retaliatory tariffs on American soybeans.
Right.
Well, Rollins is going to have to be navigating those very same trade waters.
Right.
And how she balances America First with, the needs of both farmers and consumers.
Right.
That's really crucial.
So are you saying my morning latte could get a whole lot more expensive?
Oh, it's a real possibility.
If we get into a trade war over coffee beans or whatever, that's something to think about.
Definitely is. And then there's also the USDA's role in shaping what Americans eat.
Okay.
Through these programs like SNAP, formerly known as food stamps,
Right.
and the National School Lunch Program.
Right.
These impact millions of Americans, and Rollins's approach to these could mean big changes.
Wait, are you saying what my kids eat at school could change
Potentially.
because of who's running the USDA?
It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay.
The USDA doesn't just oversee farming. It plays a huge role in shaping American nutrition.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. We got potential trade wars that could make things more expensive.
Right.
And possible, like, shakeups in programs that feed millions of people, kids, and families.
Right.
This Brooke Rollins pick is starting to feel pretty impactful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even for those of us who don't, wear overalls to work.
Exactly. And there's one more layer to this that we need to add.
Okay.
We've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr.,
Right.
the nominee for Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
He has been pretty vocal about wanting to overhaul the food system, especially when it comes to processed foods
Okay.
and what people can buy with SNAP benefits.
Oh, that's right. I'd heard about him wanting to clean up school lunches and stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
But how does that tie into what Rollins might do at the USDA?
Well, the USDA and HHS work really closely together on these issues.
Right.
So imagine Kennedy pushing to get rid of all those sugary drinks and processed snacks in schools.
Okay. Yeah.
That could directly impact the types of foods the USDA buys for school lunch programs,
Right. Yeah.
which in turn affects what's on your kid's lunch tray.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got Rollins possibly pushing for American food self-sufficiency, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And then we've got Kennedy aiming for healthier eating habits.
Right.
That sounds like a potential recipe for conflict.
It's a situation definitely ripe with tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it remains to be seen how it's going to play out. But, one thing is for sure, the choices made by these two agencies are going to have ripple effects on what we eat,
Right.
how much we pay for it,
Yeah.
and even, what our kids are offered at school.
All right, listeners, I hope you're starting to see why we're doing this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the food we put on our tables and what our kids eat at school. It's
Well,
getting real.
It is.
It is. Okay, I'm already a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Trade wars, school lunches, American food self-sufficiency.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is complex stuff, but let's break it down a bit and try to figure out what this actually looks like for
Okay.
people like you and me.
So let's say Rollins really goes all in on this American food self-sufficiency thing.
Okay.
What might that actually look like on a practical level?
Well, it could mean a few different things. We might see policies that encourage more food production here in the U.S.,
Okay.
maybe even bringing back some of those agricultural jobs that have, moved overseas.
But wouldn't that make food more expensive if we're
Yeah.
not importing as much stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, I love supporting local farmers and all, but my grocery budget, has limits.
That's the trade-off, right? You might see prices go up on certain items, especially ones that, aren't easily grown or produced here in the U.S.
Okay.
Think about tropical fruits, mangoes or bananas.
Right.
If we're prioritizing domestic production, those could become pricier or harder to find.
So it's like choosing between paying more for my smoothies or having to settle for all apple everything. Tough choice.
Yeah. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
Think about those nutrition programs we were just talking about.
Okay, yeah.
If SNAP benefits are restricted to only American-grown products, it could really limit the choices for families
Yeah.
who rely on those programs, especially in areas where fresh produce is already hard to come by.
Okay, now that's a real concern. I mean, it's one thing for me to decide if I can afford, fancy imported mangoes.
Right.
But it's another thing entirely if families are struggling to get, basic healthy foods
Exactly.
because of these policies.
It's not just about cost. It's about variety and access, right?
Yeah.
If schools are limited to mostly domestic products, what happens to those, diverse lunch menus
Right. Yeah.
that expose kids to all these different cuisines and cultures?
I hadn't even thought about that. We could be unintentionally narrowing the food experiences of an entire generation
Yeah.
if we're not careful.
It's a valid concern. And remember, we still have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over at HHS
Right.
with his own agenda for kind of reshaping the food system.
Yeah.
He's all about promoting healthy eating,
Yeah.
cracking down on processed foods, which are often produced by, you guessed it, large American agricultural companies.
Oh, man, this is getting messy.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we have Rollins potentially pushing for, more American-made food,
Yeah.
which could drive up prices and limit choices.
Right.
And on the other hand, we got Kennedy trying to steer us towards healthier options,
Right.
which could put him at odds with those same food companies that Rollins might be supporting.
You got it.
Okay.
And all of this is playing out against the backdrop of climate change,
Right.
which is already putting pressure on food production and supply chains.
Okay, time out. This is starting to feel like a giant game of food policy Jenga, and I'm not sure anyone knows which move is going to make the whole thing topple over.
It is really complex, and there are so many different potential scenarios.
Right.
But I think the key takeaway here is to stay informed. Ask critical questions. Who's benefiting from these policies? What are the trade-offs? How is it going to impact you, your family, your community?
You're right, yeah. It's easy to get lost in the, big headlines and the political jargon.
Right, exactly.
But ultimately, this comes down to what ends up on our plates.
Exactly. So let's maybe shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about those agriculture-dependent American small towns that Trump mentioned.
Yeah, okay, we haven't really touched on that.
Yeah.
But wouldn't a focus on American food production be a good thing for those rural communities?
Well,
More jobs, more money flowing into those towns. It sounds like win-win, right?
it's not quite that simple, unfortunately.
Okay.
While some farmers and rural communities might benefit from increased domestic production, others might struggle to adapt.
Okay.
Think about small farms, especially those focused on organic or specialty crops. They might face some real challenges competing with larger, more industrialized agricultural operations.
So it's not just about making more food in America. It's about how we make it and who benefits from it.
Exactly.
Are we creating a system that supports, a diverse range of farms and farming communities? Or are we just going to see more consolidation and big agribusinesses kind of calling the shots?
Those are the key questions. And it goes into this idea of rural revitalization.
Okay.
If we really want to see these small towns thrive,
Right.
it's not just about producing more food.
Okay.
It's about investing in infrastructure, education, creating opportunities that will attract young people to stay in those areas.
Yeah, you're making me think about all those old farm towns
Right.
that are practically ghost towns now
Yeah.
because, all the young people have moved away to find work elsewhere.
Exactly. And that's a trend we really need to reverse if we want to see a truly vibrant
Right.
and sustainable agricultural sector in this country. It's not just about food. It's about people and communities.
Okay, so we've got potential impacts on prices, choices, nutrition programs, rural communities, and the whole future of American agriculture hanging in the balance here.
And we haven't even touched on the environmental implications.
Oh, man.
How will Rollins's policies address things like climate change,
Right.
water conservation,
Right.
soil health?
My head is spinning. There's so much to consider. I'm starting to understand why you said this is like a giant Jenga game.
It is.
But wait, you just mentioned the environmental impacts. Don't we need to talk about that too?
Yeah, we really can't ignore the environmental side of this whole thing.
Oh, not at all.
Farming has such a huge impact on the environment.
Yeah.
And the decisions that are made at the USDA, those are going to have major implications for climate change.
Right.
Water use, biodiversity, all that stuff.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Remember those soybean tariffs we were talking about?
Uh-huh. Well, when those American farmers lost access to the Chinese market, a lot of them switched over to growing corn, which takes a lot more water and fertilizer.
Oh, wow.
And that shift alone had big environmental consequences.
So you're saying something as simple as a trade agreement can have like ripple effects on water resources and ecosystems.
Exactly. And with climate change already putting pressure on those agricultural systems,
Right.
the choices made by Rollins and her team at the USDA are going to be even more important.
Okay, so as Rollins settles into her role, what are some things that listeners should be watching for?
Okay.
Like, what are the red flags that might signal trouble ahead for the environment and our food system?
Well, one thing to watch is whether she prioritizes sustainable farming practices.
Okay.
Will she support programs that, encourage farmers to reduce pesticide use, conserve water, protect soil health?
Right.
Or will the focus be on maximizing production,
Okay.
even if it means harming the environment?
So are we going to see a shift towards more eco-friendly farming, or are we going to double down on this industrial agriculture model that's been so dominant for so long?
That is the big question, and it really ties into this whole debate about, organic versus conventional farming, GMOs versus non-GMOs,
Right.
and really the role of technology in agriculture in general.
Man, there are so many different paths we could take.
I know.
And each one has its own set of consequences. It's enough to make your head spin. But I'm starting to see why this Brooke Rollins pick is such a big deal. It's not just about farming. It's about the future of our food, our environment, our health.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important for people to, stay informed, engage in these discussions.
Yeah.
Don't just passively take in whatever information is thrown at you.
Right.
Ask questions, do your own research, and most importantly, make your voice heard.
So it's not just about what's on our plates. It's about being active citizens.
Yes.
And participating in shaping our food system.
Exactly. And, it's not just about you as an individual.
Right.
Talk to for friends and family, your neighbors about this.
Yeah.
Support organizations that, align with your values. Contact your elected officials and let them know what you want to see.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this.
Yeah.
But I'm actually starting to feel a little bit empowered. Like, okay, this is complicated, but I have a role to play in this.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
We don't have all the answers, but we can all be a part of the solution. And that's what makes, deep dives like this so worthwhile. It's not just about gaining knowledge, it's about sparking action.
Well said. All right, listeners, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From Brooke Rollins's background to the potential impact of her policies on, well, just about everything. From trade to nutrition programs to the environment.
Absolutely.
We talked about the choices we face as consumers.
Yeah.
The challenges facing farmers and rural communities, and really the importance of, being informed and engaged citizens.
It all matters.
It does.
We've explored this complex web of connections between our food system, our environment, our health, our economy, and hopefully we've left you with more questions than answers.
Because ultimately, that's what it's all about. Encouraging you to think critically, ask tough questions, and get involved in shaping the future of food in America.
The future of food is in our hands.
Stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged. This has been a deep dive worth taking.